to get started with this story about Signature Bank. Now, Joe Biden did issue a statement about this bank closing because this was another larger bank. I guess he felt like he had to come out and speak now because we had Silicon Valley Bank and now we have Signature Bank. I'm going to play his statement and then we're going to get into what could have caused this to happen to this particular bank and other comments as well. So let's go ahead and get started with this speech here from Crime Bill Joe.
Bank. Today, thanks to the quick action of my administration over the past few days, Americans can have confidence that the banking system is safe. Your deposits will be there when you need them. Small businesses across the country, the deposit accounts at these banks can breathe easier knowing they'll be able to pay their workers and pay their bills. And their hardworking employees can breathe easier as well. Last week, when we learned of the problems of the banks, and the impact they could have on jobs of small businesses and banking system overall.
So I just want to reiterate here, the first thing that he says to you is that the banking system is safe. And we don't have evidence of this yet, but I am getting '08 vibes. I told you guys a couple days ago, I'm a little anxious, more so than usual, a little antsy, because I feel like I'm having deja vu. I remember hearing these types of statements during the '08 housing crisis that we were going to be okay. Don't worry. And then there was like this domino effect where multiple banks were affected. So if you remember earlier on, Robert Reich did explain, I think it was 2 streams ago, he said that, oh, this is just this one bank. This is not going to be a domino effect. And here we are. More banks are closing. So I'm getting anxious. I don't know.
I instructed my team to act quickly to protect these interests. They've done that. On Friday, the government regulator in charge, the FDIC, took control of Silicon Valley Bank's assets. And over the weekend, it took control of Signature Bank's assets. Treasury Secretary Yellen and a team of banking regulators have taken action, immediate action. And here are the highlights. First, all customers who had deposits in these banks can rest assured, they'll be protected and they'll have access to their money as of today.
Let's remember that. Let's hold him to that.
That includes small businesses across the country that bank there and need to make payroll, pay their bills, and stay open for business. No losses will be, and this is an important point, no losses will be borne by the taxpayers. Let me repeat that. No losses will be borne by the taxpayers. Instead, the money will come from the fees that banks pay into the deposit insurance fund.
They keep repeating this statement. Ro Khanna made this statement as well. No money's going to come from taxpayers. Don't worry, guys. It shouldn't have to come from us regardless. Like, why do they keep, like, that's the part that's, I don't know. It's unsettling to me that they keep feeling the need to say that. It should never have to come from the taxpayers. This isn't our fault. We had nothing to do with this, but they keep repeating that.
Because of the actions that our regulators have already taken, every American should feel confident that their deposits will be there if and when they need them. Second, the management of these banks will be fired. If the bank is taken over by FDIC, the people running the bank should not work there anymore. Third, investors in the banks will not be protected. They knowingly took a risk, and when the risk didn't pay off, investors lose their money.
We'll see. Let's see if that actually holds. So he's telling you that the managers of those banks will be fired and the investors will also be held accountable. We will see, because again, like I said before, in '08, they were not held accountable, but hopefully this is done the correct way this time.
That's how capitalism works. And fourth, there are important questions of how these banks got into the circumstance in the first place. We must get the full accounting of what happened and why those responsible can be held accountable.
So let me get this straight. He said we must get the full story of how this happened in the first place. This is very concerning because you are addressing the American people in this mini press conference and you're telling them what the accountability is going to be for those that were involved, but you don't know how it happened. There are several economists that are very well versed in this. I had someone on recently, Peter from Philly, to talk about public banks. And I asked him, like, how did this come to be with Silicon Valley Bank? And Peter seemed to understand how it happened. So it's kind of concerning that you have the president of the United States here that's telling people, don't worry, your money's going to be safe. You're going to be okay. You can trust the banking system, but you're also telling us that you don't know what caused this to happen. And to me, that's short-sighted on his part.
In my administration, no one is above the law. And finally, we must reduce the risk of this happening again. During the Obama-Biden administration, we put in place tough requirements on banks like Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank.
And during the Obama and Biden administration, we had to deal with the housing crisis, and you guys decided to bail out the banks instead of bailing out the American people. I'm adding that part in there because he's going to leave that part out.
Including the Dodd-Frank law to make sure that the crisis we saw in 2008 would not happen again. Unfortunately, the last administration rolled back some of these requirements. I'm going to ask Congress and the banking regulators to strengthen the rules for banks to make it less likely this kind of bank failure would happen again.
Okay, this piece right here, he said the last administration, which was Trump's administration, rolled back some of those laws that they had in place. This is the same statement that Pete Buttigieg is giving about the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. He said, well, the Trump administration, they rolled back those. Okay, but here's my thing. When Joe Biden took office, you knew that those rollbacks already existed. So you should have went ahead and made those changes then. The Democratic Party has a tendency to be reactive instead of proactive. What's being proactive? I just won a presidency. There were certain laws that were rolled back and restrictions that were rolled back by the previous administration. Let me go ahead and reverse that and fix that. That's being proactive. Being reactive is when you wait until a disaster happens and then you say, whoops, we better put those policies back in place to protect, the people, to protect the banking system, to protect the train system so that this doesn't happen again. This is a common problem that I've noticed with the Democratic Party. They did the same thing in reference to Roe v. Wade, being overturned by the Supreme Court. They had plenty of time, decades, to codify Roe v. Wade into law. They chose not to do it. They chose not to even bring this up again as an issue until the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. And this has been a common issue with the Democratic Party. They are reactive. They are not proactive. That is something that they need to change.
And to protect American jobs and small businesses. Look, the bottom line is this. Americans can rest assured that our banking system is safe. Your deposits are safe. Let me also assure you, we will not stop at this. We'll do whatever is needed.
The banking system is safe, but we don't know how this happened. Guys, word of advice here. Word of advice. If I were you, make sure you have some money stashed aside. Make sure you have, if you have to go to the bank tomorrow and take whatever you can, a couple $100s out, whatever you can, and just put that aside in a safe space, I recommend that you do that. This is something my dad always tried to warn me about. Always have cash on hand in the event that something like this happened.
On top of all that, let's also take a look at a moment to put the situation in a broader context. We've made strong economic progress in the past 2 years. We've created more than 12 million new jobs, more jobs in 2 years than any president has ever created in a single 4-year term.
And yet you still have an increased homelessness population in this country. Despite that, You never explained what these jobs were, if they were full-time, if they were temp, if they were contract positions, if these jobs offered benefits for people, including health benefits. This also has nothing to do with these banks closing. Thousands of people have been laid off by the tech industry before these banks started to close. So what this is Joe Biden trying to come in and comfort you in such a sense to calm your nerves so that you're not concerned. Just to remind you, let me remind you what our administration did. Nobody's really thinking about that right now if they can't get to their money. If you're one of these people and you had accounts at these banks, you're not thinking about, oh, well, the Biden administration created all these jobs. No, you're thinking about, how can I get to my money? When are you going to give me my money? What's happening with these banks? That's what you're going to be focused on. But this is him trying to sell his administration again, trying to sell and say, this is the success that we've had. People don't want to hear that right now.
Unemployment is below 4% for 14 straight months.
Because you kicked people off of unemployment. You kicked millions of people off of unemployment. Him and Pramila Jayapal continue to leave that out.
Take-home pay for workers is going up, especially for lower and middle-income workers. And we've seen record numbers of people apply to start new businesses, more than 10 million of them. More than 10 million applications over the last 2 years starting businesses. Now we need to keep this progress going. That's what swift action that my administration over the past few years is all about. Protecting depositors, protecting the banking system, protecting the economic gains we've made together for the American people.
If you were protecting the depositors, they wouldn't be in this situation to begin with.
Thank you. God bless you. And may God protect our troops. See you in California.
Mr. President.
What does the troops have to do with, you see, this is something that politicians tend to do. I don't know what this is. God bless our troops. This conversation has nothing to do with the military. It has nothing to do with war, anything like that. This is particularly about these banks closing. And he wants to bring in the whole patriotic stance. God protect our troops. There is a movie called Head of State with Chris Rock. If you haven't seen it, you should watch that movie. It's really funny. Because there are certain things that they point to in that movie, making fun of politicians, that there are certain things that politicians say that are just ridiculous. And one of the statements you hear over and over again in that movie is, God bless America and no place else, from one of the candidates. He says it over and over, even when it's not even relevant. So this is an example of a politician saying something that is not relevant at this point in time, has nothing to do with the conversation. God bless our troops. Joe Biden is not with it.
What do you know right now about why this happened? And can you assure Americans that there won't be a ripple effect?
Do you expect other banks to fail, Mr. President?
Do you see what's happening here? This is the president of our country. It's just like quick stage left, exit very quickly. Look, they're asking, he didn't stay for any type of questions because you know why? They probably told Joe Biden, don't answer any questions because he's still experiencing some type of cognitive decline. Watch how him exit. Watch this.
For the American people. Thank you. God bless you. And may God protect our troops. See you in California.
Mr. President, what do you know right now about why this happened? And can you assure Americans that there won't be a ripple effect?
Do you expect other banks to fail, Mr. President?
Should all depositors be protected at all banks? All right, thank you, everybody. In-town travel pool.
Like, the banks are safe. Let me exit now. That's what this is about. Like, it's just, it's embarrassing. It really is. When you have a banking situation that's happening in this country, the response shouldn't be, okay, bye. Now let's get into the situation a little bit more closely about Signature Bank, because this has become a domino effect. So I do have a clip here that I want to show, and it says emergency move to avert banking crisis. So they've already identified it as a crisis, and he's telling you you have nothing to worry about. Let's go in.
This morning, the government is deploying emergency measures to stop a potential banking crisis, including the takeover of another regional bank, Signature Bank of New York, just 2 days after regulators shut down Silicon Valley Bank, the second largest bank failure in U.S. history.
I think that without this, there could have been some serious runs on other banks because there would have been a loss of confidence throughout the whole system.
The Federal Reserve.
Second largest, guys. Second largest. So now they're going to get into the piece about the Federal Reserve.
Last night announced clients at both banks will get access to all their funds when branches open today, not just the $250,000 insured by the FDIC. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen insists this is not a bailout because the funds are coming from a pool of money paid into by Wall Street, different than.
They feel the need to say that it's not a bailout because they already see the blowback that they're getting from people, especially on social media, about bailing out the banks.
The taxpayer-funded bailouts of 2008.
This is not a bailout. This is change of policy, yes, but the FDIC's funding does not come from taxpayers. It comes from the banks, the big banks.
See, there they go again with the word taxpayers. We're not using your taxpayer money to save these banks. You know how they continue to say this? Because they know the blowback that they got from people from 2008.
Banks.
All the turmoil began last Wednesday when Silicon Valley Bank, a large lender in the tech industry, tried to sell assets to boost its balance sheet. That panicked investors, and customers raced to withdraw their money after seeing the news on social media.
It's a confidence game, and social media can destroy confidence very quickly. Twitter.
Why would you be confident if your bank just closed? That statement didn't even make any sense. It's a confidence game, and social media can hurt confidence. So can a closed bank. Like, what? Why would you be confident if you can't access your funds?
It was just ablaze with concerns about what was going on here. And that creates a wildfire situation.
Senator Bernie Sanders blames Silicon Valley Bank's collapse on successful Republican efforts in recent years to relax regulations on small and medium-sized banks. As for Signature Bank, the reason for its collapse remained unclear overnight. Many of Signature's clients are in cryptocurrency.
And I want to bring up this point. So now they're bringing up the issue about crypto again. And we saw what happened with FTX. By the way, there is a connection with FTX and Signature Bank. I'm going to get into that in just a second. But again, I feel like they're trying to push the need to regulate crypto, especially after the collapse of FTX. Notice they said the statement there from Bernie Sanders. He said this is because of Republicans. The previous administration is the reason why we're in this situation, because they pulled back some of the regulations. But again, like I said, when Joe Biden took office, he could have put those regulations back in place, and he decided not to. He decided to wait until something happened. And now it's like, okay, let's go back and fix that. Again, the Democratic Party is reactive, not proactive.
Over the weekend, the uncertainty spread to another regional bank, First Republic, because of its similar profile to Silicon Valley. Many customers concerned.
Trying to figure out if this is the best place to hold our money.
But overnight, First Republic said it secured funding from JP Chase and the Federal Reserve.
We got to pause there when they say JP Chase, because this isn't the first time where JP has had to, or they've intervened to help another bank. Although when this happened, like in 1914, 1919, when it happened back then, JP actually stepped in to save the federal government. And by doing so, they actually acquired those banks that had failed. They didn't save them. They bought them out, so to speak. That's one of the reasons why JP grew the way that it did. But again, this points to the particular point that we are too connected to the central banking system. The fact that these banks, these regional banks, have to be rescued by these central banks is problematic. And that goes to show you just how much power JP has. And this is going to come up later on in the show, because there's something else I need to mention about JP that connects to another story. But this is a very, very powerful bank. You have to understand that the central banking system is more powerful than the president of the United States. The president more so is a puppet, so to speak. These central banking systems, they have more power. So you have to keep your eye on them.
Meantime, experts say the emergency program announced by the Fed should be enough to calm financial markets and prevent a domino effect.
Each case is different. I don't think this is anything like 2008. I don't think we have to worry about that. We don't have contagion in the financial system itself.
They mentioned 3 banks. How many banks do you need to have a domino? That's 3 dominoes. Maybe they need a couple more banks to declare it as a domino effect.
JP Morgan Chase and PNC are among the banks reportedly in talks to acquire Silicon Valley Bank. Silicon Valley has drawn criticism for reportedly paying bonuses to employees just hours before the bank was seized by the government.
What I tell you, they're going to acquire those banks. At least Silicon Valley Bank. JP Morgan is going to swallow that up, basically. This, people ask me like why I talk about the banks so much, because I'm sorry, but this is a serious issue. You have to pay attention to them because they really do control the way things operate in this country, not the president of the United States. Now, there was a connection to Signature Bank and FTX, and this is something that came my way. Signature Bank was sued last month for allegedly helping FTX commingle customer funds with Alameda's trading accounts. The bank was taken over by regulators today. And so you'll see the screenshot here. Signature Bank sued for substantially facilitating FTX commingling. Signature knew of and permitted the commingling of FTX customer funds within its proprietary blockchain-based payments network, Signet. That's according to the court filing. So we really do have to focus on what's happening here with crypto and these banks. Look at what has happened over the past couple of months. First, FTX collapse. That was huge. Then you have Silicon Valley Bank collapse. Then you have Signature Bank collapse. They also mentioned in that clip First Republic Bank, but I think First Republic, it sounds like they'll be able to bounce back a little bit better. But I really do think because of what has happened over the past couple of months, I really do think they are going to try to find a way to regulate crypto. I really do. Hey, if I'm wrong, I'll come back and I'll eat my words, but I have a feeling I'm not going to be wrong on that. I'll take that comment on Rockfin. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. You know what I think? This is what Jay-Z meant by he never heard the word capitalism. Before Bernie, both parties were not making a concerted effort to say capitalism because socialism, its opposite, was suppressed. Like a fish not recognizing that it's in water, it was already baked into the system. So why does Joe say capitalism works? It sounds like he's scared we're losing confidence in it. He does. I think he does know that people are losing confidence in, the capitalist system, especially when you look at the legislation that just passed recently, where you even had so-called progressives like Ro Khanna voting to denounce socialism. I think they know what's coming. I think they know. Kim says, I believe Plaskett was appointed to her position. No voting needed. Yeah, we're about to get into her. Scott says, it's not a crash. It's an opportunity. Dana, I closed my account at Bank of America during the Occupy Wall Street's Move Your Money campaign. I joined a credit union. Yeah, this is something that my parents have tried to push for a long time, is to join credit unions instead. JB says, hey, Sabby. Hey, everyone. Forehead kisses. Robert says, no matter where the bailout money comes from, it's sucking up from us to the oligarchs. That is the only thing to remember. Thank you so much for that, Robert.